Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a really raw, rule-based framework for success from literally one of the most recognizable figures on the entire planet, Arnold Schwarzenegger. We're going to break down his exact blueprint, straight from his own words, to understand how a kid from post-war Austria transformed himself into a global icon across multiple, completely different industries. And, this isn't just some fluffy motivational talk. It is a real, structural guide to turning a massive vision into an absolute reality. So let me ask you right off the bat, do you know where you are going? It sounds super simple, right? But there is this modern epidemic of people just aimlessly drifting through life. Arnold recognized this incredibly early on. He realized that if you don't have a vision, if you don't have a specific goal, you just drift around and, well, you end up nowhere. Having a definitive answer to this question is actually the single most important factor in achieving anything of value. Which brings us to Section 1, the power of purpose and escaping the drift. Let's think about what actually happens when you don't have that purpose. There is a staggering, honestly kind of sad reality happening right now. 74% of people hate their job. Whether you're in America, Europe, wherever, the vast majority of people literally do not like what they do all day. And why is that? It's because they didn't start with a goal. They just aimlessly drifted around, a job opening popped up, and they took it because, hey, we all have to work. But when you just drift into a job like that, it becomes a chore. It's just work, and it is definitely not fun. I mean, think about how unbelievable it is that only about a quarter of people actually enjoy what they do every single day. Now, contrast that aimless drifting with this idea. Arnold uses the analogy of a medical student. A medical student studies for countless grueling hours, but they know exactly why they're doing it, right? They want to become a doctor. They know exactly where to go. Having a clear purpose entirely transforms hard work from a miserable chore into an intentional, joyful pursuit. You aren't just clocking in, you are building toward a very specific destination. So let's get into it. The first rule of success: have a vision. To really grasp what a true vision is, we have to go back to Arnold's origin story. He was born in 1947 in post-war Austria, and his parents just wanted him to have a totally normal life, maybe become a farmer or a factory worker. But the thing is, that was their vision, not his. He always felt he was born for something special. Then, at 11 years old, he sees this documentary in school about America. He saw these huge skyscrapers, massive bridges, 6-lane freeways, and in that exact moment, it was like a switch flipped. A massive vision was sparked. He looked at his actual surroundings, the little farmhouses, and firmly decided, I want to be in America. Next up, finding your blueprint, the Reg Park inspiration. So, having a broad vision of America was a great start, but he needed a roadmap to actually get there, and that roadmap arrived completely by chance one day after school. He's walking past a store in Graz, goes inside, and happens to stumble upon a bodybuilding magazine. Right there on the cover was Reg Park, a 3-time Mr. Universe who was also starring on the big screen as Hercules. Arnold reads this magazine and instantly forms his exact 3-step blueprint for his entire life. Step 1. Become a bodybuilding champion, just like Reg Park. Step 2, get into movies, just like Reg Park. And Step 3, make millions of dollars, become rich and famous, exactly like Reg Park. He was incredibly relieved because, suddenly, he had a crystal clear goal. And because he had that vision, everything became easy. Even the hardest, most grueling work imaginable. During the pumping iron days, people would always ask him why he was in the gym 5 to 6 hours a day, doing 500-pound squats, 500-pound bench presses, and literally 2,000 sit-ups, yet he always had this massive smile on his face. He told them it was because he was shooting for gold. Every single agonizing rep, every super heavy weight he lifted was getting him one step closer to turning his vision of the Mr. Universe title into reality. He actually couldn't wait to do another 500-pound squat. Visualizing that goal made the daily grind genuinely fun. And what was the result of that relentless, vision-fueled drive? Well, by the age of 20, he traveled to London and actually won the Mr. Universe contest, becoming the youngest Mr. Universe ever, all because he had a goal and simply refused to drift. That brings us to our next section, ignoring the naysayers, rule number 2. Whenever you have a grand vision, you're naturally going to face one inevitable obstacle: the critics. You absolutely cannot listen to them. Arnold actually relates his mindset to this incredibly powerful quote by Nelson Mandela: "Everything is always impossible until someone does it." Throughout his whole life, whenever Arnold presented his massive goals to people, the reaction was always exactly the same: "That's impossible," or "That can't be done." But rather than getting discouraged, he was just eager to be the very first person to do the impossible and prove them all wrong. This is such a brilliant illustration of his communication technique with himself. When the naysayers said impossible, Arnold's brain instantly translated it to it is possible. When they told him no, he heard yes. When they said it can't be done, he heard it can be done. He basically built this mental firewall that took all that negative input and used it as positive fuel for his ambition. So he took that mental firewall, combined it with his crazy 5 to 6 hour bodybuilding work ethic, and applied it directly to his next massive goal, Hollywood. He approached acting with the exact same blueprint. He went to college to study English, he took acting classes, he even took accent removal classes. He just worked and worked and worked all day long. Which leads into our final chapter, liabilities turn into assets, the Hollywood turn. Now, success in Hollywood definitely wasn't instant for him. His early movie Hercules in New York completely tanked, went, in his own words, right into the toilet. But he never let that discourage his vision. He just kept iterating. He did Streets of San Francisco, Stay Hungry, Pumping Iron, The Villain, and that unyielding iteration eventually led to him being cast by Dino De Laurentiis at Universal Studios for Conan the Barbarian. When that came out in the summer of '82, it was the #1 hit at the box office. Remember all those naysayers we talked about? The critics who swore his massive body could never be sold on screen because the times were wrong? Well, after the massive success of Conan, the director, John Milius, actually went to the press and said, if we wouldn't have had Arnold, we would have had to build one. The exact body that the critics called an unsellable liability had literally become an absolute cinematic necessity. And it didn't even stop there. Think about his accent. The very one he was literally taking classes to remove because people mocked it so much. After filming The Terminator, director James Cameron told the press, if Arnold wouldn't have had that accent and talked like a machine, the movie wouldn't have worked. Once again, the very thing he was attacked for became the defining asset for the success of one of the biggest sci-fi franchises in history. Honestly, this is the true alchemy of success. By completely refusing to listen to the losers and maintaining this unyielding belief in his own vision, Arnold quite literally transformed his perceived liabilities into unparalleled money-making assets. So what's the crucial takeaway for us? It's this 4-step blueprint. First, have a clear vision so you don't drift. Second, put in the relentless, joyful work because you actually know where you are going. Third, ignore the naysayers by translating their no into a yes. And fourth, use that momentum to turn your liabilities into your greatest assets. I mean, just as a reminder, this exact same blueprint is how an immigrant who, by law, couldn't run for president of the United States, pivoted his political vision and still became the governor of California, which, as he proudly points out, is the 5th largest economy in the entire world. It was the ultimate political accomplishment for him, achieved by following these exact rules. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to apply to your own life starting today. When you set your massive vision and the inner and outer critics inevitably tell you no, what will you hear? Will you just drift away, or will you hear yes? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.